All right, friends, welcome into another episode of Story World. Steve Schramm here with my boy Al. What's up, Al?
Uh, just doing the podcast. This is
You know?
this is what I look forward to every week, and then when it's over, I just look forward to the next one.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you, it's so weird though. Like, it's a week apart and we're wearing the same clothes. What are the chances of
I
that?
haven't changed since. It's been like this every day. In fact, I have not left this very spot. It's just been I've just been sitting here waiting to
Man,
go for the
well,
next
that's
one.
kind of crazy. We need it. Like, these are really, really corny jokes. We need to come up with some better ones. Anyway, structural tension.
The,
Speaking of that,
the jokes
we
keep me
are.
coming back though. That's what keeps me coming to do this.
That's all that matters, right? We're our own
Yes,
biggest fans.
absolutely. All right.
Cool.
Yes, structural tension.
There's too much tension, we gotta clear it out, we gotta clear it out. So this is gonna be the final, episode in our series on structural tension. So far, we sort of introduced the topic, what it is, how it came about, and then I talked last week about business and marketing and how can kinda draw people along throughout your marketing process with campaigns using structural tension and redirection and all that good stuff, and so today we're gonna focus on fiction. We're gonna focus on really where the whole concept really comes from, which is storytelling and fiction and being able to hold the attention of your readers. And so this is not my particular area of expertise, but fortunately we have
Uh,
somebody whose area of expertise this is. And
Someone
so
who I have listened to experts before on the subject, and so
yes,
that's
yes,
my area of expertise on this. I have
nice,
heard of conflict. I know it's in each book, and
yes,
we'll go from there. So, yeah, I guess I'll just go ahead and take it off. So,
yeah,
uh,
do it.
I'll start off first by just kind of running through the couple ways that I think of when I think about creating structural tension. One way, I both are effective in their own way, depending on who your readers are. Um, but the second way I definitely prefer. So the first way is revealing something to the reader that the main character doesn't know. So essentially, it would be say if the main character, say if it's a mystery and the main character is a detective and he's in a realm, he's looking at all these clues, and then like the last line at the end of the chapter, you say like little did he know like the killer was in the wardrobe behind him or something. And then the next chapter, so the next it definitely creates that tension. You as the reader think, oh my gosh, like now like the killer's in the wardrobe and he doesn't even know. So it definitely creates a very like quick tension. It doesn't have to be necessarily that hard hitting. It can be something a little bit more drawn out. Um, it's effective in doing that. The reason why I don't like it is because I really like writing from the perspective of the character. Um, that's that you're telling the story through. And so I don't like to
Mm,
reveal anything that that character doesn't know. So the reader finds out stuff as the main character finds it out. So even though the first one is effective and I wouldn't say it's a bad thing to use, that's just not my preference on doing it.
So,
It,
what would be like what would can you give me, like, a sentence? I'm kinda putting you on the spot. Can
no,
you
it's
give me,
good.
like, a sentence and the difference between, like, if you were able to take the same concept or the same story or whatever and, like, say a sentence writing the way that you prefer, and then a sentence writing this other way, would you be able to do that? Does that make sense?
Wouldn't really be a sentence. It would be just a total different way of doing it, which
Gotcha.
is part two, which is what's, but to kind of go along with the first one though, one thing that I think, I mean, I definitely do. I think it's kind of hard to get away from. One way you could do it is instead of doing something like that, where you're revealing to the reader something that the main character doesn't know. One way to do that is if you are following two or three different points of view for characters. So, say if you have a detective and then you have his assistant who's like in the office doing detective work or whatever, looking at these old files, you could have his point of view and then he stumble upon something saying, oh my gosh, like we didn't catch the right guy, like the murderer's still out there. And then it goes back to the main detective and he doesn't know that, but you as the reader do now because the other main character found out. So that's kind of that would be the way that I do it. And I definitely will use that method. It's a little bit
Gotcha.
more effective there because then you're not straying from what is known by at least one of the characters. That's just always how I operate. Like I
Cool.
whether it's a detail or yeah, even if it's a simple detail or a main conflict or whatever it is, I don't like my readers to know something that the main characters don't know themselves. It just feels kind of like they're looking at it. I'd rather them look at it from inside the character's mind, which actually goes to my second way. And this is kind of my preference on creating structural tension. Is well, I'll read it because I like what I read and what I wrote. My preference for creating tension is internally through the character by placing them into uncomfortable situations and states.
Mm,
Probably could word that a little bit better. I put uncomfortable situations in states because hopefully your character is developing through the story. And so their state of mind is probably going to change or evolve into something different than what it was at the beginning of the book. Um, so what I like about this method is you don't have to have a plot twist or something or something necessarily plot related to create the tension. Like in my first example, if you're revealing something to the reader, typically at that point it's something where you're getting to something very plot related that's going to affect
yeah.
the character externally.
Yeah, I
Whereas
see that.
internally, like for instance, so the book that I'm writing right now, I'm about how far away? Like 30,000 words. And I've had a couple like different climax parts in there. I'm kind of weaving that in, nothing huge, but just kind of simple. But in between, I'm really working in getting into the main character's mind and having him kind of have his own internal contention with what's going on around him. And so
Yeah.
some question that brings up is you strengthen the tension by seeing how the main character feels, what decisions they might or might not make, and then the lingering questions on what the consequences may be. So if you say, okay, so the main character, found, let's just say he's evolved magically a little bit more powerfully, he doesn't know how to control it. Does that mean that he's like going to be terrified and go into hiding and not be able to help, the other people, or is he going to go crazy and kill all the bad people? And so,
Yeah.
like viewing it from by being able to see the main character's thoughts and how he's processing it, that kind of creates that lingering tension throughout where you can kind of see potential climaxes that may come, but you just don't know and you're not aware of yet. So, and just kind of it's funny, I just thought of this when Steve and I were talking before we went live here, that I had stumbled upon a book. I didn't I didn't finish it, and I should have, but, a book that I got really far into, a couple years ago. And one of the reasons why I stopped it, I do wanna go back and rework it at some point, but one of the reasons why I stopped it is because I realized throughout it, I was relying way too heavily um, on plot points creating the tension, and there was really no internal conflict that I was working with the characters. And so a lot of the in between climaxes was just getting from point A to point B, and it was just not good writing. Whereas now, hopefully, I think I've improved where the characters really provide that push for the readers to continue wanting to read the next chapter, even though a particular chapter might not have a battle or a fight scene or a big argument. At least you can gather more information from the main character, feel a little bit more of their tension and pressure, whatever they're feeling, and continue on that journey with them. Um, that's
Yeah.
basically, I think that kind of sums up all of my thoughts. I guess one final thing, um, aside from that, is making promises to your reader that kind of get something in the
Mm,
back of their mind. It can be from the obvious, from okay, chapter 2, they're exploring a dungeon, and oh, this character just happened to find like a really cool like dagger that like glows when he blows on it or something. I don't know, and so he keeps that, and then the story continues. Well, you made such a big deal out of bringing out out of pointing out that weapon. At some point, hopefully, you bring that up, and it weaves into the story somehow, or does something cool, or else there's no reason that you brought that knife up.
yeah.
And then there's also subtle ways to do it. Like J.K. Rowling puts a lot of stuff in her books, like from books 1 to all the way up through where finally in the 7th book, you think, looking back even at the first, just subtle things that you would have no idea would come back up, and it's there. And so, there's always promises that you put out to your reader, whether you're pointing out to something or a question, say that you hint at someone's past, but you don't really reveal it fully. Something happens and interrupts the conversation, whatever. you kind of get the reader thinking, okay, so obviously that something happened to him when he was a kid, or something weird, happened to his friend group or whatever. Um, I really want to see, what happens with that, and, how that maybe has affected his life. And so just kind of bringing up these promises and
Yeah.
questions to the reader creates an internal conflict, obviously within themselves, not even having to see it from the main character's perspective, but just them wanting to know and get the answers by the end of the book. So I guess those are just kind of my thoughts on it all.
Yeah, it's crazy, like, I didn't until I got into marketing and frankly, until I met you and started getting into some fiction stuff,
Yeah.
I didn't realize how, like, how much the characters really mattered, right? I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, obviously, the plot matters a great deal, like, the story has to be going somewhere, but, like, as humans, we're so much more interested in how that plot is affecting the character, based on who the character is and maybe what their faults are, what their flaws are, and it's, like, always
Mhm.
just so interesting to me how, like, the story in order for the story to be interesting, the characters themselves have to be interesting. Because if the characters are boring and have no tension even within themselves and, like, one of the books I was reading, The Fire in Fiction, yes, I'm that nerdy. I read books about how to write fiction so that I can learn how to write better marketing. Uh, figure that one out, but it's true. And it's like, one of the distinct things I remember him talking about in that book, I think the author is Donald Mass or Mace, I'm not exactly sure how to say the last name anyway, because it's spelled kinda weird. But, uh, it was interesting how he was saying some of the different ways that you could really do this, you could create this tension was even literally even inside of one sentence, like, 2 opposing ideas describing the way a character thinks or acts in the world or both can create enough tension to keep people going for the next few pages.
Mhm.
And so even inside of just a single sentence, like you can have so much tension um, and conflict set up that just keeps people moving forward. And that's really right. That's really the idea is the thing that storytelling is so great at is the pull, right? Like, you
Yeah.
should never have to be pushed along. If you have to be pushed into reading a story, then that's no good. Like, the story should be pulling you along, one of those they talk about page turners, you can't put it
Yeah.
down, and this, that, and the other thing. That's really where this comes from, is the tension is so great, and the conflict is there, and the people are so interesting that it's just pulling you along through the story, which
Mhm.
I love. So
Yeah. You made a note just about how important characters are. I would say I guess this is probably in agreement with most people, but I don't know, I could be wrong. I would much rather choose like very interesting um and well written and thought out characters over a really interesting and good plot.
mhm.
Obviously, if you have both and they can converge on each other, then that's obviously that's the goal, is to have those two things. But I'd much rather have a really interesting character that I care about, meander through a, kind of like baseline plot, versus the other way and have a really interesting plot, but then characters that I just don't care what happens to them. Because at the end of the day, whether they
Yeah.
live or die, I'm going to close the book and be like, oh, okay, that's neat. But if it's a character I care about, I'm going to close the book and think, oh, wow, that's really cool that that character started here and ended there. I really like how his life ended, or how
Yeah.
because you can have feelings attached to characters, they become real to you, but you don't really have feelings attached to a plot. Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And so that's
Well,
and that's just the one thing that I'm really trying to focus on is, um, writing really good characters, and it's tough. It's going to take a long time for me to get there, but at least
yeah.
I'm starting on it.
I think one of the things that I remember from On Writing,
Yep.
from Stephen King, I think goes a little bit the opposite direction, although I could be remembering wrong, but he talks about how, like, ultimately the story is what matters, and, he does talk a little bit more again, yeah, about plot, but I even think in that book he made a big deal about the fact that people make too much a big deal about plot, and it's really just about all just the story in general, like, he says a lot of his ideas, which, actually kinda made it a little bit more practical for me because I'm I'm dabbling, very much dabbling in the fiction writing, like, I wanna do it one day, like, really do it, but not today, you know? But I'm thinking about it, it's on the periphery, it's not, anyway. Um, and one of the things that gave me hope that it might be possible, to even do this one day was that, like, he was talking about how a lot of his ideas for stories literally just start with a crazy situation,
Yeah.
Like, yeah, what would happen if, like, trucks came to life and held people hostage? And boom, you got a great book and a made for TV movie you know, and just whatever. So there's it's interesting how much the story I think the story has to be there. Maybe that's the way to think about it. I think the story has to be there to pique your interest at all. Like I think it'd be hard to sell a book just based on a character because you don't know anything about the character until you start really reading the book. So the situation and the story really has to like pique your initial interest, but I don't think you'll keep reading it if the characters are not interesting at all. I think you'd have to be pretty highly motivated to get
I
through the
I
end of it.
I agree. There's a switch there. You definitely have to. I mean, the characters have to be somewhat interesting, but it's more important to kind of have that initial hook in the story. It feels like, okay, this is a story that's going to be interesting. Like this is a crazy world, or this is, that's really
Yeah,
neat. But then by the end, you definitely like if the characters are boring, people will stop reading it. Like they just will.
exactly.
And so
Yeah,
there
yeah,
definitely is a kind of switch by the end of the book where I would even say kind of like a third of the way through where people have to start really liking the characters. Um,
yeah. I would say the only exception that I can think of to this is not a movie, it's a book, or excuse me, not a book, it's a movie. Is the unbearable weight of massive talent. I had no idea what the story was going into that. All I knew is that Nick Cage played Nick Cage, and I was there for it. I mean, I was
here or
ready
there.
for whatever they could possibly throw at me. And all along the way, I was there. I didn't care what was happening in the story. I just wanted to keep watching Nick Cage be Nick Cage.
I need to watch that movie again. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
It is
I
so
need yep,
good. Yeah, now
I
he's
think
playing a vampire in the
yeah,
upcoming movie.
Renfield, something like that.
Renfield, yeah. So that
Yeah,
should be
man,
it will be good because it's Nicolas Cage, and so
it's impossible not to be good.
right.
Well, on that note,
On that note, brings us to story of the week. Steve, why don't you take us away?
yeah, so I wrote this down, and I would give credit for where I got this if I had wrote down where I got it from. And the more I look at it, I'm thinking I actually might have just had this as an original thought. So I'll just say it this way. If this is an original thought, cool. If this is not an original thought, I'm so sorry I stole it from you, whoever you are, wherever you are. Please don't sue me. I'm just going to read what I wrote. Once you know what it is that readers want from you and what they value most, giving them more is never going to be a bad thing. No Harry Potter fan ever said, "No thanks, J.K. Rowling, I've had enough of the story." When you love something, and when that something fills a void in your life, gives you a positive feeling, answers your questions, keeps you in the know, or makes you feel understood, you will never not want more of it. Um, and I don't know, I think it's too good of an insight, I don't think I wrote it, but for the life of me, I just don't know where it came from. But I think there is a when you've got something like that, like a J.K. Rowling, like a Harry Potter, um, it it's like anything you can do to extend the life of the world, the better. And this is where to make it a little bit more down to earth, this is where, I'm gonna differ with some people because I know there are definitely some people who would disagree with this. When it comes to things like Lord of the Rings, okay? Personally, I am stoked at the prospect of because I just got into Lord of the Rings.
Mhm.
I'm stoked at the prospect that there's more coming down the line being made even in current times with the current state of the movie industry and et cetera, et cetera. Like, I'm here for it, right? Like, I'm excited about things and opportunities to expand the world, even, and I know this is where the purists will get mad, but even at the expense of some of the original thoughts or ideas, I think there is a measure of evolution that I'm willing to deal with for the sake of the world being expanded, um, and all of that. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just like, is there a such a thing, and maybe it's when J.K. Rowling dies, I don't know, but is there such a thing as a Harry Potter fan who wouldn't be there for more Harry Potter if she
Yeah.
wrote about it? I don't know, but to me, it seems like if that's become a part of somebody's world, they would want more. So anyway,
Yeah, I agree. I've talked to a couple of people who aren't thrilled about hearing about new Lord of the Rings movies being made, but I disagree with that completely. Assuming, let's say the movies are good, like if they're made with good quality and are good stories, why wouldn't you want more of that?
exactly. Now, if it
So
sucks,
if
then
it
okay, understandable, but things that suck regardless of whether or not they get
exactly,
you know what I'm saying? So, like,
yeah,
I still want more of the story, more of the more
absolutely.
exploration into the tiny dark corners of that world, and so, yeah, like, why
It
wouldn't you?
it reminds me, we did an episode a long time ago. I forget which one it was about, but one of the things that I had wrote about marking a good story is being sad when it's over. I'm pretty firmly set on that. At the very least, in my kind of mindset of epic fantasy, where you have, you know, several thousand pages, being written about, 3, 4, 5 main characters. Then you get to the end of it after, the how many few hundred hours you have spent reading it, maybe even more. At the end of it and you close it, you should feel a little tinge of sadness that those
Yeah.
characters you spent all that time with is over. And so I think that marks like a very good story, very good characters.
Yeah, I mean, a good example for me, I literally did this the other day. I knew it was a long shot, but I went the other day on Amazon looking if I could buy books or anything that people had written about the 24 series with Jack
Mm,
Bauer. Um, I promise you, if something right now came out that was Jack Bauer, something related to I would be watching it. I would be
yeah.
reading it. I would be all about it just because like that's a world that's become so much a part of my life that like oh, a good real practical example. So, of course, it's launching on Peacock, NBC's service that I'm probably not gonna subscribe to just for this one thing. Maybe I will for a period of time,
Yeah,
I don't
maybe.
know. But, Monk, they're doing like a thing, like a yeah, it's either a movie I think it is a movie. I think it's gonna be like a movie exclusive to the Peacock
Yeah.
platform reprising all the characters again from Monk,
Wow.
and
Monk was so good.
I was incredible,
It
and
was really good.
I've watched through that series twice now, and I love it. It's one of those worlds that I feel like at any moment I could just very easily
Yeah.
step back into and would be pleased to do so, and they're giving the opportunity to do that, and so, yeah, I mean, will I
Absolutely.
subscribe just for that? I'll probably subscribe, watch the thing, and then cancel, so it'll cost me whatever, $10,
I've done the line. Actually just did that this past week with something.
Did you?
Yeah, it's just worth it from time to
Yeah.
time.
I don't typically do that, but I see this as something I could do, so, anyway.
Definitely. Awesome. Well,
Your turn.
my story of the week is a little bit different. So Justin Roiland, the Rick and Morty creator, have you heard about the stuff going on with him?
No, uh-uh.
It's I don't know if it was a few months ago or a few weeks ago, but um he I actually have never really watched Rick and Morty. I know I probably would like it.
Haven't yet.
But it's a animated adult cartoon and apparently it's
Mhm.
just like one of the best. And so he created it and then a few months ago one of his ex-girlfriends came out saying that he like abused her, this and that and so said, well, he's not working on the show anymore. They cut him out of that work, cast him out.
Yeah.
And then I think this week, well, I get yeah, um, the case was dropped, and basically, like, she just kind of made it all up. And
Whoa.
and he ever since like he was accused of it, I think he got off of Twitter, like he handled it like the best way possible. And at the end, he essentially said like, "Hey, like I'm ready to get my life back on track." He said, "Unfortunately, with this stuff coming out, there's a lot of things that people really rushed and judged me, and didn't wait to see." And it
Yeah.
makes me sad when that stuff
Man.
happens, you know? I mean,
Yeah, me too.
and I can see, like, how, like, if a company says, "Hey, like, with this, like, take a back seat for a little bit, okay? Like, we're not letting you
Right.
go. It's just this is really serious, so let's just take a back seat. We'll see how it plays out." And then if it plays out where it's something like this, then you can say, "Okay, like, hey, we're glad that, you stepped aside. You were willing to kinda take a breather for a little bit throughout this. We definitely wanna welcome you back." But instantly, it's just, "Okay, like, you're gone." And,
Yeah, it's
and it's just
certainly
you just see that a lot.
well, it definitely is not in the spirit of innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah,
That's for sure. Which
yeah,
for criminal things like this, last I heard, is how it was supposed to be treated. So, like, if only we would treat it that way in real life. But, like, with cancel culture and all of that, a lot of times it doesn't really work that way.
yeah.
Um,
And it's
and
all
I
about
j
that, like, initial thing. Like, say if say if it was if none of this came out until, like, the verdict. Let's say you saw a news article that
mhm,
said, "Hey, Rick and Morty creator, you know, was accused of this," and then in the same headline said, "But is acquitted and is,
yeah,
innocent." Then people be like, "Oh, okay, good." But because, like, initially it happened before a verdict's made, it's like, "Oh, wow, like, I can't believe he did this bad thing." Eh,
exactly.
and with
Yeah,
social media, there's, like, no way to really get around that. It just isn't.
yeah. No, yeah, it is crazy because people are immediately gonna start forming thoughts, based on that. So that's just another one of those deficiencies, in our current society that I think could be fixed. Yeah, if we just get back to that mindset of okay, like it's he said, she said at this point, and people do make up these sorts of stories. It has happened plenty of times before. So, yeah, let's treat him as innocent until proven guilty. Let's make sure that we do our best to prove him guilty. And if he is guilty, to charge him thusly. But until that point, let's reserve judgment.
Yep.
And,
Shows you the
sad.
power of, what telling a story can do.
Yo, oh, yeah. It can
Yeah.
be harnessed for good or for evil, for
Ho
sure.
hopefully, we're doing it for good, Steve.
We're definitely doing it for good. So don't worry.
No worries here.
Trust me, we're doing it for good.
Trust me. You can trust us.
So Ryan Holiday wrote a book, Trust Me, I'm Lying. It was
Uh,
about when he was
that's funny.
it's kind of an expose on, like, the media industry from when he used to work for them and stuff. Anyway,
That's fun.
yeah, kinda interesting.
Alright, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Okay, yeah, thanks so much. Share it with your friends if you enjoyed it, and, I don't know what we're gonna talk about next. I'm not sure what's up next on the schedule, but whatever it is, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I actually don't know, but we have a lot of subjects lined up. We got a movie night
Yep,
coming pretty soon. So
yep,
that'll
yep.
be good. And then, oh, if you're just seeing, like, this episode is your first one, we got a plethora of episodes. So backtrack
Yeah.
and catch up on whatever ones look good. And
Like 40 something of them or something like that.
yeah,
So,
oh yeah, we did the
lots.
time.
We did the time. We did the time for sure. So, we just want more and more of you to listen, so go tell your
Yes.
friends. All
All
right?
right, Steve. We'll catch you later.
Exciting. All right, cool.